For armored trucks. That's what it took. For armored trucks, 2 federal agents, and one very confused 9-year-old girl standing on the porch in her pajamas, asking her father why the men in suits kept calling him sir. Marcus hadn't been called sir in 3 years. Not by the neighbors who watched him clip coupons at the grocery store. Not by the landlord who let the $400 rent check bounce twice without a word. Not by the school secretary who quietly pulled him aside to say that Lily's lunch account was overdrawn again. He was the guy who drove a '98 Civic with a cracked passenger mirror. He was the guy in line at the food bank on third Tuesdays. He was the guy who wore the same gray jacket every single day. No matter the season, no matter the weather, no matter what anyone thought. Lily tugged at the sleeve of that jacket now. She was 9. Dark braids. Gap-toothed smile she'd had since first grade. She'd learned not to ask for things she knew he couldn't afford. Concerts. Name-brand shoes. The big backpack the other kids had. She never complained. She just got quiet in a particular way. Eyes down, mouth pressed small. And that quiet cost Marcus more than any bill ever had. One of the federal agents stepped forward with a sealed envelope. He held it out with 2 hands, the way you present something fragile. Marcus looked at the envelope, then at the 4 idling armored trucks on his street, his ordinary fence-lined, slightly patchy lawn street. Then he looked down at Lily. She looked back up at him, braids still messy from sleep, a stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. The one she'd had since she was 3, ear half chewed off. "Daddy," she said, voice small and curious. "Do you know those men?" He crouched to her level. He adjusted her collar. He held that calm like a man who'd practiced it for years. "Go inside, baby," he said. "Put some shoes on." She didn't move. She just stared at the trucks. And in that moment, that quiet, impossible morning moment, nobody on that street knew that everything they thought they understood about Marcus Cole was about to collapse. His name was Marcus. He'd grown up in Decatur, Georgia, 3rd of 5 kids, father out before he turned 8. He put himself through 2 years of community college on warehouse shifts, transferred to a state school on a partial scholarship, and graduated with a finance degree at 24. He built something from nothing, slowly, methodically, the way certain men do, quietly, without credit, without announcement. By 31, he'd built a portfolio management firm with 11 employees and assets under management that most people in Decatur wouldn't believe if he'd told them. He hadn't told anyone. Then his wife, Claire, got sick. That part of the story he kept short. He had to. Every time he tried to tell it in full, his jaw would lock and his hands would go still at his sides. The short version, stage 4. 14 months. She made him promise, near the end, to keep Lily grounded. "Don't let her grow up thinking money is love," she'd said. "Don't let her think she needs to be rescued." He kept that promise the only way he knew how. He liquidated his public profile. He dissolved his firm's external presence. He moved out of their 5-bedroom house in Buckhead and into a rented 2-bedroom in a modest neighborhood called Crestwood, a place nobody would look for him because nobody who knew him would ever think to look there. He enrolled Lily in the local public school. He drove the old Civic. He shopped at the discount grocery 2 exits down. He let the neighbors assume whatever they assumed. Every morning, Marcus made Lily's breakfast before she woke. He set her plate, eggs, toast, 1 sliced banana, on the left side of the table where she always sat, and then he stood at the window with his coffee and watched the street come to life. Lily would shuffle out around 7, hair half-braided from the night before. Socks mismatched, always. She'd sit down, drag the plate toward her, and spend 30 seconds looking for something she never mentioned. Then she'd glance at him sideways. He'd already be looking back. She didn't need to say it. Neither did he. Some mornings she brought a library book to the table. Some mornings she drew on the paper bag he packed her lunch in. One morning, a Tuesday in November, she drew a small house with 4 windows and 2 figures out front, one tall and one small, and she slid it across the table without looking up. He put it in his coat pocket. He still had it. The first hint was the briefcase. It was a plain thing. Scuffed leather, combination lock, perfectly ordinary, except that Marcus kept it in the hall closet behind the winter coats, and it had a small circular mark on the handle, the kind you get when a badge holder has been clipped to the same spot for years. Lily had found it once while looking for her umbrella. She'd picked it up, tested the weight. "It's heavy," she said. "It's old," he answered. She put it back, but she looked at it for a second longer than she needed to. It started with a phone call Marcus shouldn't have answered. The number was Dale Whitman's, a man he hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 years. Dale was 53, a former client, one of the first men who'd trusted Marcus with serious money back when the firm was young. A widower, 2 grown kids who rarely called. He'd retired on a modest pension and a careful portfolio that Marcus had managed for a decade. Marcus let the phone ring twice. Then he picked up. "Marcus." Dale's voice was thin. "I don't know who else to call." Dale had done what a lot of retired men do when they feel irrelevant, and a smooth voice offers them significance. He'd handed $62,000, almost everything he had outside his pension, to a man named Griffin Holt, who ran a private equity syndicate out of a rented office suite in Midtown Atlanta. Holt had a website, a suit, and a PowerPoint. That was all. The syndicate was a fraud. Dale had figured it out on a Tuesday morning when his portal login stopped working and Holt's phone number went to a recording. "I don't know what to do," Dale said. "I'm not gonna. I just need to know what I'm looking at." Marcus sat at his kitchen table for a long time after the call. Lily was at school. The house was quiet. He had a cup of cold coffee in front of him. He knew Griffin Holt. Not personally. He knew the type, the structure, the paperwork language they used. He knew what a recovery looked like and how slim the odds were without immediate, very specific action. He also knew that doing anything about it would require him to make phone calls. To people who knew who he really was. To people who would ask questions. Who would pull threads. He sat with his cold coffee for 40 minutes. Then he opened the hall closet. He moved the winter coats aside. He took out the briefcase. He made 3 calls. The next morning he drove to the office building where Griffin Holt operated. He wore the gray jacket. He took the stairs. The receptionist looked at him the way receptionists look at men in gray jackets who haven't made appointments. "I need to speak to Mr. Holt," Marcus said. "Do you have an appointment? Tell him it's about the Whitman transfer. He'll know what that means." She looked skeptical. She picked up the phone. Her expression changed while she was still listening. She put the phone down slowly. "He says he'll be right out." Holt was 40, well-dressed, practiced in the casual authority of men who've never been seriously questioned. He came through the glass door with his hand already extended. "Marcus, I'm not sure who gave you my—" "Sit down, Mr. Holt." Holt blinked. He looked at the receptionist, then back at Marcus. He sat down. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. Marcus had a folder. The folder had 4 documents. He slid them across one at a time. Each time Holt looked at one, a little more of his practiced calm dissolved. "Where did you get this?" Holt said. Not a question. "Mr. Whitman's funds," Marcus said. "All of them. Returned within 7 business days. Or the next conversation happens with different people in the room." Holt laughed. Short. Nervous. "You can't. I already have." Marcus stood. He picked up the folder. 7 days. He drove home. He picked Lily up from school. She climbed in the back seat with her backpack and launched into a story about a frog someone had brought to science class. Marcus listened. He asked the right questions. He stopped at the gas station and let her pick a snack. She chose the peanut butter crackers. She always chose the peanut butter crackers. They were home by 4. That night Marcus checked his email twice. There was nothing from Holt. There was also nothing from the 3 people he'd called with the briefcase open. He'd expected at least an acknowledgement. He didn't sleep well. By the following morning, there was a different problem. One of those 3 phone calls had gone somewhere Marcus hadn't intended. A name had moved. And a very particular kind of attention. The kind Marcus had spent 3 years making sure would never find its way to a 2-bedroom house in Crestwood, was now pointed directly at him. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. Plain envelope. No return address. Marcus opened it at the kitchen counter while Lily ate breakfast behind him, kicking her feet under the table and narrating the plot of a book she was reading. He let her voice fill the room. He read the letter twice. It was not from Griffin Holt. It was from a man named Warren Calloway, a name Marcus hadn't heard spoken aloud in 9 years. Calloway had been a federal compliance officer during a period when Marcus's firm had been audited for a reporting discrepancy that turned out to be a software error. The audit had cleared. The discrepancy was nothing. But the audit had put Marcus on a list, and Calloway had kept a copy of that list, and now, apparently, Calloway was using that list. The letter suggested, in the careful language of men who've learned not to write threats directly, that Marcus's renewed activity in certain regulated channels had raised flags. It suggested he might want to speak with Calloway privately, at a specific address, on Friday. It also suggested, and this was the sentence Marcus read 3 times, that a certain child's enrollment in Crestwood Elementary might be subject to scrutiny regarding guardian financial disclosures. Marcus folded the letter, put it in his jacket pocket, next to the drawing. He finished his coffee. "Dad," Lily's voice. "You're not listening." He turned. She was watching him from the table. Eyes steady. Too steady for 9. "I'm listening," he said. "What part did I just say?" Pause. "The part about the library," he tried. She shook her head slowly, the way kids do when adults underestimate them. She picked up her juice. She let it go. That afternoon, Marcus drove to the address on the letter. He sat in the parking lot for 8 minutes. He went inside. Calloway was exactly as Marcus remembered. Thin, gray at the temples. The particular smugness of a man who has spent 20 years in a position of marginal power and mistaken it for authority. "You've been busy," Calloway said. "I helped a friend recover money. You made regulated contact on behalf of a third party without." "I know what I did." Calloway smiled, set his hands flat on the desk. "The thing is, Marcus, you've been very careful. 3 years. Very quiet. But quiet has a limit. What do you want?" "I want you to walk away from the Whitman matter. Let it resolve itself. Let Holt do what Holt does. In exchange," he tilted his head, "I forget I have your file." The room was very still. Marcus looked at Calloway. He looked at the window behind him. He thought about $62,000 and a man who wouldn't sleep until it came back. He thought about Lily. "I'll need the weekend," Marcus said. "Of course." He stood. He drove home. Friday night. Saturday morning. He didn't sleep either night. He sat at the kitchen table after Lily went to bed, and he went through the briefcase, methodically, carefully, the way a man goes through something he hasn't touched in years. He read documents by lamplight. He made notes in the margins in small, precise handwriting. Sunday he drove Lily to her friend Amara's house for a playdate. She bounced out of the car with her stuffed elephant. She'd started taking it everywhere again, which she only did when something felt unsettled, though she'd never said that aloud. He watched her disappear through Amara's front door. He sat in the car for a moment. Then he made a phone call. It was to a woman named Dr. Patricia Rowe, a name that meant nothing to anyone in Crestwood, but meant something very specific to the 12 people in the country who oversaw the regulatory architecture that Calloway had built his career inside. The call lasted 4 minutes. Marcus said very little. He confirmed a name. He confirmed a date. He confirmed a document number from the briefcase. Dr. Rowe said, "We've been looking for that number for 6 years." Monday came. Calloway called Marcus's cell at 8:15. His voice had changed. "I need you to come in. I'm unavailable Monday." "Marcus, I'll have a representative contact your office." Silence on the line. Then, "What did you do?" Not a question. Marcus ended the call. Tuesday morning, Lily came down for breakfast and found her father already dressed. Not in the gray jacket, but in a white shirt, collar open, sitting at the table with the briefcase in front of him, open. She stopped at the kitchen doorway. She looked at the briefcase. Then at him. "You okay, Dad?" He looked up. Something in his face was different. Not worry. Not relief. Something older and quieter than either. "Come eat," he said. "Eggs are on the stove." She sat. She ate. She told him about a dream she'd had about a lighthouse. He listened to every word. He was still there when the first of the 4 armored trucks turned onto their street. The trucks did not come alone. Behind them, 2 black sedans, government plates, and a white SUV with tinted windows that parked directly in front of the neighbor's mailbox. Mrs. Hernandez from across the street opened her door, looked out, and immediately went back inside. The Pattersons' dog started barking and didn't stop for 10 minutes. Marcus stood on the front porch. He had his coffee. He had Lily beside him. She'd heard the engines and come out in her pajamas, stuffed elephant tucked under her arm, before he could stop her. The federal agent who stepped out first, Agent Tara Simmons, later identified in the documents, was 40, precise, wearing the expression of someone who has delivered many kinds of news and learned to keep her face measured until she understood the room. She walked up the front path with an envelope held in both hands. She looked at Marcus. She looked at the briefcase, which he'd carried out and set on the porch railing. She looked back at Marcus. Her step slowed. Just slightly. Just enough. "Marcus Cole," she said. "That's right." She held out the envelope. He didn't take it immediately. He set down his coffee, moved Lily gently to his side, and then, only then, reached for it. Simmons watched his hands. She was still watching when the second agent, a younger man named Krebs who'd clearly been briefed, but perhaps not fully briefed, stepped up beside her. Krebs was looking at the house, at the modest yard, at the cracked passenger mirror on the Civic in the driveway. "This is," Krebs started. Simmons put one hand up, almost imperceptibly, and he stopped. The envelope contained 3 documents. A federal clearance summary, a restitution confirmation, Dale Whitman's $62,000, plus interest, returned in full as of Thursday morning, sourced through a recovery mechanism that Holt's lawyer would spend the next 4 months trying to understand. And a third document, a formal disclosure of assets and holdings under Marcus Cole's registered instruments. Krebs read over Simmons's shoulder as she reviewed her copy. His face went through several things. He took one step back. "Sir," he said. Then he stopped. Then quietly, "This house." Marcus said nothing. The white SUV's door opened. A woman got out, Dr. Patricia Rowe in person, which Simmons had clearly not expected, because Simmons went very still in a way that said she understood the weight of what this house call had just become. Rowe was 61, small, silver-haired. She moved with the deliberate unhurry of someone who has never in her life needed to rush. She walked to the porch, looked at Marcus, and offered her hand. He shook it. "The document number checked out," she said. "And then some." "I know. Marcus." She said it quietly, like a word that meant more than a name. "Why didn't you just call 9 years ago?" He didn't answer that right away. He put his hand on Lily's shoulder. Lily had been watching everything. The trucks, the agents, the woman with silver hair, with the careful attention of a child who has learned that adults sometimes say less than they mean. She looked up at her father now. "Daddy," she said, "are those people here because of you?" He crouched to her level. He adjusted the ear of her stuffed elephant, the half-chewed one, the way he always did. "In a way," he said. "Is it bad?" He looked at her for a moment. Really looked. "No, baby." His voice was steady. "Calm the way a wall is calm. It's the opposite of bad." Rowe watched this. Her hands were still at her sides. Her expression. Simmons would write this in her field notes later without quite understanding why she included it. Was something close to moved. Krebs had stepped aside. He was looking at the ground. He looked like a man who had spent his career making certain quick judgments and had just discovered the cost of one of them. Later, after the agents had come inside and the documents had been signed and the restitution paperwork had been filed across all 4 jurisdictions, they sat in Marcus's kitchen. Agents, regulators, a man in a gray jacket at his own table. Lily sat in the corner with her library book and her elephant, pretending to read. She was not reading. She was watching her father the way she'd watched him every morning over breakfast, with that quiet, sideways attention she'd been giving him for 3 years. The light in the kitchen was ordinary. Yellow. Morning thin. Rose set her pen down. The account disclosures, she said carefully. The combined holdings. Marcus nodded. You've been living here. She said it like a question that wasn't one. I've been living here, he confirmed. Ro looked around the kitchen. The mismatched chairs. The lunch bag drawing, still on the counter, faded now, the crayon lines soft with age. The single banana, sliced, on a plate to the left. Why? She asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Lily. Lily looked up from her not reading, caught his eyes, and in the way of children who have spent years paying attention, she understood. Not the details, not the numbers, not the meaning of 4 armored trucks on a Tuesday, but something true about the shape of it. She went back to her book. She was smiling. 3 months later. Marcus and Lily still lived in the house on Crestwood Lane. He hadn't moved. He hadn't announced anything. The neighbors noticed 2 things. The gray jacket was replaced, most mornings, by a navy one, and the Civic got a new passenger mirror. Dale Whitman called on a Sunday in February. He said thank you 11 times in 3 minutes, and then went quiet for a long stretch and said, I just want to know why you did it. Marcus told him the honest thing, that Claire had made him promise to keep his eyes on what mattered. Dale didn't say anything for a while after that. Then he said, she sounds like she was something. Marcus said, she was everything. Lily found out slowly, the way kids find out the truest things, not all at once, but in pieces over time. A teacher mentioned it. A classmate's parent said something. One afternoon she came home and sat at the kitchen table and looked at her father for a long time without speaking. He waited. You were never really broke, she said. No, but you let me think. I let us both live like it. He sat across from her. Your mom asked me to. She thought about that. She picked up her elephant. She looked at his gray navy jacket on the hook by the door. Were you sad? She asked. Pretending. He shook his head. Just once. I wasn't pretending anything important, he said. She seemed to accept that. She went and found her library book. But before she disappeared down the hall, she stopped at the door and looked back. Dad. Yeah, I didn't need the other stuff anyway. He let that sit in the room for a long time after she was gone. Some fathers protect their children from hardship. Marcus chose something harder. He gave his daughter the experience of living without a net. Not because there wasn't one, but because he believed that the shape of a person is formed in the reaching, not in the being caught. Whether that was wisdom or a wound dressed up as one, that question doesn't resolve easily. Here is what we know. A man spent 3 years in a gray jacket and a cracked mirror Civic so that his daughter would learn the value of what she had before she ever knew how much there was to lose. And on a Tuesday morning, when 4 armored trucks idled on his ordinary street, the most extraordinary thing in the scene was a 9-year-old girl with a half-chewed stuffed elephant, standing beside her father without fear. She didn't need to understand the trucks. She understood him. That was enough. That was everything. Now here's the question we'll leave you with, one that has no clean answer. If you could give your child every comfort and security in the world, but believed it might cost them resilience, would you choose the comfort anyway? Or would you choose the reaching? Think about that. If this story moved you, like and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Solo Dad Stories for more stories about strength, sacrifice, and second chances.